Welcome to this lesson on culturally responsive teaching in diverse classrooms. The learning outcomes for this lesson are shown here. Over the past decades, the makeup of the United States school population has changed. In 1960, Caucasians made up 80% of the students attending school. In 2011, non-Hispanic Caucasians made up only 57% of the U.S. student population. The National Center for Education Statistics found that, in the 2015-16 school year, 51% of all U.S. students in public schools were non-white. English language learners composed 9.4% of the total student population during the 2014-15 school year. Educational standards across the U.S. require all learners to acquire English proficiency regardless of their cultural or socioeconomic backgrounds. What does that mean for teachers? It means there are more learners whose first language is not English, and teachers who are responsible for the education of all learners will have to respond to linguistic and cultural differences. What do diverse populations bring to our classrooms? They bring us the gifts of different languages and cultures. These bring us fresh perspectives and vibrant new ideas that have the potential to animate classroom interactions. Yet this diversity can also bring challenges. What happens when diversity increases in classrooms? Teaching with text is more challenging. Students from other backgrounds struggle with literacy and learning in school, and the strengths that diverse students bring with them often cannot be tapped. So, what can teachers do about diverse classrooms? Make strong connections between the content taught and the students' cultures and languages. Make sure that literacy-related instruction is strategic and culturally related. Keep learning expectations high so all students are college and career ready. Provide an appropriate, challenging curriculum with additional support for English language learners. Understanding cultural and linguistic differences is an important first step. As the organizing principle suggests, teachers respond to linguistic and cultural differences by scaffolding instruction in culturally responsive classrooms. In diverse classrooms, cultural and linguistic sensitivity is a crucial first step in working with students to meet academic standards. Once teachers respond to these differences by scaffolding their instruction, they have culturally responsive classrooms and learning happens. The definition of culturally responsive teaching, or culturally relevant pedagogy, is teaching in which educators make connections between the content taught and the students' cultures and languages. Culture is defined as the shared beliefs, values, and role-governed patterns of behavior that define a group and are required for group membership. On the surface level, there is food, dress, holidays, and celebrations. On a deeper level are values, beliefs, family structure, child-rearing practices, language and nonverbal communication, expectation, gender roles, and biases. It is these deeper elements that affect learning. After the first crucial step of developing a sensitivity to cultural and linguistic differences, teachers must develop culturally relevant instructional practices. These practices require that teachers identify and develop 5 essential themes in their teaching: identity and achievement, equity and excellence, developmental appropriateness, teaching the whole child, and student-teacher relationships. The first theme in a culturally responsive classroom is identity and achievement, meaning to value students' backgrounds. The home cultures of students are acknowledged, valued, and used as tools for learning. Teachers who value this theme look through the cultural lens of their own cultures as well as their students' cultures. Remember, cultural awareness does not and should not include colorblindness or race-neutral policies. The second theme is equity and excellence, which emphasizes that students have different learning needs. Equity doesn't mean that every student receives the same instruction or support. It means that students receive what they need to understand the concepts taught. In other words, equity means the curriculum content needs to make sense within those cultures represented in the classroom. The third theme is developmental appropriateness. This means teachers are encouraged to consider what might be thought of as culturally appropriate for students from diverse backgrounds. What is just right for one student might be inappropriate for a student from another culture. The fourth theme is teaching the whole student. This is related to developmental appropriateness, but focuses on homeschool community collaboration and fostering a supportive learning community for students from diverse backgrounds. A student feels a part of a community when this theme is incorporated into a classroom. The final theme of a culturally responsive classroom is student-teacher relationships. The teacher sends a clear message to students that they are genuinely concerned about their students individually. They do everything possible to promote effective interactions between teachers, students, and families. Teachers do what it takes for keeping it real. It's important to remember that cultural understanding begins with the teacher. What will happen in a culturally sensitive classroom? Teachers teach with greater effectiveness. Students will explore ideas without the fear of having to speak perfect English. Students will respond better to instruction. In busy classrooms where high-stakes tests may be the culminating activity, listening and talking with students is sometimes left behind. However, trust and rapport are important for engaging in culturally responsive teaching. Hammond describes the need for teachers to listen with grace, which includes the following: give full attention to the speaker and to what is being said, understand the feelings behind the words and be sensitive to emotions being expressed, suspend judgment and listen with compassion, and honor the speaker's cultural way of communicating. Once rapport is built in the classroom, it is time to examine what is being taught and how. There are several approaches to teaching for cultural understanding, which are listed here. Let's discuss each one. The contributions approach has teachers emphasizing the surface level of cultures like holidays and celebrations, such as Martin Luther King Day. It does not make provisions for in-depth study of deeper elements. The additive approach goes more in-depth by teaching various themes related to multicultural concepts and issues through a thematic unit of study, while the curriculum remains much the same. When teachers seek to help their students truly understand other cultures by giving their students opportunity to read about cultures, make good judgments about them, think critically, and generate their own conclusions and opinions, they're using the transformative approach. This approach, combined with the next one, lends itself well to content literacy strategies that emphasize critical analysis and interpretation. The decision-making social action approach goes a step further by providing learners with opportunities to engage in activities and projects regarding issues and problems known as social action. The ABCs of cultural understanding and communication approach helps teachers learn about and value families and communities. The steps in this approach are: 1. Having students write autobiographies and life stories. 2. Interviewing parents or family members. 3. Creating a compare-contrast chart about life of the family member interviewed and the teacher. 4. Analyzing the differences through writing. And 5. Making connections by studying the curriculum to find ways to make studies meaningful to diverse classrooms. Today's teachers need to engage students in literacy and learning experiences that will provide them with the cross-cultural knowledge and skills they will need as future adults in a nation that has become increasingly diverse. When teachers use multicultural literature in the classroom, they provide students with texts that not only are engaging but also recognize the unique contributions of each culture and the similarities of the human experience across cultures. At the same time, multicultural literature helps non-mainstream cultures appreciate and value their heritage and give all students the benefit of understanding ways of knowing about the world that are different from their own. Using multicultural texts to integrate into the curriculum is no easy task. Here are some suggestions for selecting multicultural literature for effective teaching practices. A defining characteristic of multicultural books is their focus on people of color. These books provide diverse students with rich opportunities not only to see themselves reflected in the books they read, but also to appreciate and celebrate the experiences of people of color from the past. As such, multicultural books also provide mainstream students with opportunities to learn about other cultures and people. Such books can help students understand cultural norms related to family, morality, dress, and values of other cultures. Most importantly, however, multicultural literature brings the people of a particular group into focus and can help students realize that in spite of our differences, all people share many common emotions, dreams, and hopes for the future. Pictured here are some suggested books. It is important to be aware that students from diverse cultural backgrounds bring different ways of knowing, different styles of questioning, and different patterns of interaction to school. But what does ways of knowing mean? Generally, it means what is known in one culture isn't automatically recognized in another. Funds of knowledge is when the interest and background knowledge of culturally different students are recognized as valuable and a source of rich knowledge. The smart teacher will use these funds of knowledge to make meaningful connections between the often abstract concepts taught in content area classes and the application of those concepts in the world outside the classroom. Culturally responsive instruction, as you can see, is related to students' ways of knowing, motivation for learning, and their funds of knowledge. There are 7 characteristics of culturally responsive teaching. They are listed here. There are more languages than ever in schools today. Research has found that there is a linguistic difference teachers should be aware of: dialects, or cultural variations. Allowing students to use dialects or a blend of languages can be a helpful tool in supporting students' development of academic literacy. Called code switching, a student may begin a sentence in one language and switch to the other. Another important concept is to familiarize minority students with Standard American English, the language of the dominant mainstream culture in America. Dominant culture students learn Standard American English from their families. Minority students do not. How can students from the non-mainstream culture compete for jobs if they don't know the culture of power? It is important for teachers to remember that language differences should not be mistaken for language deficits among culturally diverse students. Here are some other important terms for you to know. English learners are also known as ELs. They may or may not have been born in the U.S. Language proficiency is the ability to use a language effectively and appropriately throughout the range of social, personal, school, and work situations required for in daily living in a given society. Bilingual programs are programs that teach English and provide instruction in the core curriculum using the home language of the English learner. ESL programs are programs that are taught entirely in English. Students often are pulled out of the regular classroom for extra English instruction. What makes content literacy difficult for English language learners? Skills must be learned in several domains: listening, speaking, reading, and writing. Academic language in textbooks is not the language of conversational speech. It is word knowledge. Examples are all the science terms one learns. Linguistic complexity of English is a challenge. Informal social English is learned in about 2 to 3 years. Academic English typically takes between 5 and 10 years to master. How's that for a challenge? Vocabulary in areas such as mathematics, social studies, and science can be overwhelming, causing content to be inaccessible for many English learners. Shown here are several strategies for helping English learners with content area vocabulary. Sheltered instruction is an approach to content area learning that provides the instructional support needed to make grade level content more accessible for English learners. Sheltered instruction uses a variety of instructional aids and lots of pictures, provides challenging and grade level appropriate instructions, and is often used in classrooms of native and non native speakers at an intermediate level of language proficiency. One model for sheltered instruction is the Sheltered Instruction Observation Protocol. It integrates content with additional language support and enhances delivery by making teachers aware of highly effective practices that improve language development. Content area teachers are in a strategic position to make adaptations in the way they design and deliver instruction in classrooms with native and non native speakers. These adaptations fall into 6 categories. Adapt instruction by providing comprehensive input. Provide comprehensive input by doing the following: simplify your language, speak clearly and at a slower rate, repeat yourself, define new words and paraphrase, use fewer idioms, use gestures and facial expressions to help dramatize points during discussion, and check for understanding frequently. Vocabulary learning is easier for English language learners when a teacher helps them develop a few key terms in depth rather than having them learn many words superficially. Help students recognize and use the relationships between cognates and the context in which they are used. Cognates are words that are culturally and linguistically related in both the non-native speaker's language and in English. English learners need to be taught that not all texts need to be read and understood at the same level of detail, and that they may employ different strategies for different reading tasks. For English learners who are still in the process of developing reading fluency, the repeated reading strategy may be a useful intensive reading approach to fully comprehend a content area text across varied grade levels. The steps are shown here. There are many different strategies for active engagement that will engage students in comprehending texts. Some can be as simple and straightforward as creating posters for a chapter. Good writing strategies include mental compositions, where students first think about their ideas before writing them down and then provide concrete suggestions to help them generate ideas.